Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Always Level Up, a show about overcoming failure, perseverance, and just getting through life in a successful manner. My guest this evening, I'm super excited for this one. Actually, somebody I've listened to, I don't know, like 70% of my life so far. The voice of the Flyers, shortly, some of the voice of the Phillies as well. And you should all know him if you watch the Flyers. Jim Jackson. Jim, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Yariv. And 70%, that's good because I do get people who come up to me and say, I'm all they know. And I know I'm officially old at that point. So,
well, to be honest with you, I actually started later with hockey. It was like the age of 11 for me because I grew up Israeli. So it was like a lot of soccer.
Yeah.
For the most part. But then actually, as soon as I discovered hockey, it actually stole my attention immediately. So
it has that way of I've talked to people. You usually I don't like to say this because I'm in television, but you usually fall in love with the game of hockey in person. Once you watch it in person and you see the speed and the physicality and the pace of it, it's kind of engaging. And then you can follow it once you learn the sport on TV. But it's sometimes tough to learn off of TV or really get a sense of what's so great about the sport.
So it's interesting. I actually have a different start to it. I actually got into it from video games. My dad installed NHL 2000 on my computer, and it was only available to play with the Stars and the Sabres. So I fell in love with Mike Modano like very early. He had my favorite number, and I saw he was the best player. And then from there, actually, I got the game, and then saw the Flyers, and then went to a Flyers game. To your point. And then that was it. Simone Gagne was like my favorite player. Mark Recchi. Just fell in love with them completely, and then never missed a game, or tried to not miss a game actually. So
yeah, and it has that effect, and it's with any sport. I mean, I fell in love with all four sports when I was a kid, so I had to watch. I was in upstate New York, so I had to watch. Don't hold this against me now, but I had to watch the Giants. They were my football team, and the Rangers were my hockey team. Knicks were my basketball team, and the Mets somehow snuck in there as my baseball team. It was in the 70s when I was a really young kid. So the Yankees were kind of the evil empire back then. So I didn't like the Yankees, but I fell in love with kind of all of them. But I basically fell in love with sports off the television. But hockey, there was a minor league team in my town, and my father was a veterinarian, got like a split season ticket with the other partner in the practice for the minor hockey league team when I was pretty young, like 8 or 9 years old, 7 or 8 maybe. And so I went to these games as a young kid, and we sat first year pretty high. But after that first year, I told my dad, we want tickets for all the games. So we got our own season ticket the next year. And I sat in the upper row of the lower section, right behind the other team's bench. It was a great place to watch the game. And that's how I fell in love with the sport. So, I mean, I liked it off of television, but I loved it by seeing it and being there and watching the speed pace and the physicality of it.
That it's so funny that you mentioned, actually, that's where I wanted to start it off, actually, is your childhood. So you grew up like in upstate New York, I assume, Utica, right?
Utica, which is not far from Syracuse, about 45 minutes from Syracuse, up there in the those Erie Canal towns. They all go right along there, Rochester and Syracuse. Beautiful and Utica and Albany, and Buffalo, of course, on the western side. So, it was a small town. I mean, technically, I grew up outside of Utica. I went to a parochial school in New York Mills, which had my graduating class was 73 people. So it was pretty small, and not exactly the beginnings of what you would think would be a career in broadcasting in a big city, because I was a small town kid. There's no question about it.
No, I love that. Actually, I graduated with 130 students, so I'm not too far off from
small,
that. Yeah. But actually, that's really interesting. So when how old were you when you said you started going to the hockey games there? Or like
7 or 8, I believe. I think it was the mid 70s. Yeah, so about 7 or 8 years old.
Okay. And let me ask you this. So you're obviously a huge sports fan at this point. Did you have a dream? Did you have any expectations that what you're doing today would be what you're doing today? Or did you just kind of think?
My initial dream, I think with many of us, is to play, right? Of
course.
So I didn't play hockey because there was no hockey at my high school. So you know how we are at tunnel vision when we're kids. You want to be you want to be the stud on campus. So campus, I had 73 kids in my class, but I wanted to play sports that I was going to be able to play in high school. So I tried at basketball and baseball and football, hockey. There was a kid up the street from me who was a really good player who had an outdoor rink every year. Back then you could have outdoor rinks, even in upstate New York. Hard to do that anymore, the way the climate has changed, but he had a rink and I'd play there all the time, but I didn't play any organized hockey. So that kind of drifted away from my playing standpoint as I got into my 11, 12-year-old and on into junior high. But I quickly pretty much realized that I wasn't going to make it to the big time as an athlete. I was average at best, probably less than that. I did have a couple of moments in football as a JV player, but not very good. But one moment, which actually kind of was the crystallizing one for me, I was still on the JV football team, and they called down and they wanted a body for practice. Somebody had the flu or something on the varsity team. So, I get moved up. I was a sophomore. I was small. I'm still, it never did get to be a point where you look at me and say, wow, he's a football player. But so they stuck me in there at middle linebacker. I mean, this was just like they could have put a tackle dummy there and been better off. But I'm there and they're doing drills and they turn to the fullback dive drill, which is where the middle linebacker has to plug the hole. And, I was just getting destroyed. And this one time I get ready and the one time I finally got to the hole before the runner, I'm like, this is it. And I lowered my head and took him on, and it was just like the movies. The next thing I know, everyone's standing over me and I'm looking up at the sky. I got knocked out. And back then, today there would have been a rush with an ambulance, the whole thing. I wouldn't have played for a long time, concussion. Back then it was almost like, get up. They were just telling me to get off my butt. I had no idea where I was at first, and then got myself righted up. I went off the sideline for a couple plays, but right back out there and took some more hits. But I went home that day. I remember telling my father, I said, I knew this already, but I guess this kind of puts the point home. He says, well, you were an upper level. And I said, yeah, but I'm not going to ever be. I wasn't even close. I said, I'm not. And I got to find a way, to at least do what I love, if not at the major league level of any sport, at least do it. And he said, well, you sit in front of the TV and announce games into your tape recorder. I was already doing it. He said, why don't you look into broadcasting? And Syracuse was right down the road. So it was kind of like a perfect fit. My goal became at that point to get to Syracuse, to get into Newhouse and to see where it took me. So, I ultimately wanted to be doing something like a team at the top level. There was no doubt. But I still think, being a small town kid, my dreams were probably more like being the sports director at WIBX, the radio station in Utica. That was true until I went to Syracuse, because I worked hard at my grades. You have to have good grades to get into Newhouse. You have to have some money too. My parents saved me because they basically foot most of the bill. I did have some of it, but most of it was my parents getting me because it's an expensive school. And I went there, and the day I'd say maybe 2 days after I set foot on the campus of Syracuse, my goal changed from being maybe the sports director at WIBX to president of CBS Sports, because you're around all these kids from New York City and from all over the country, and their ambition is so much higher than mine was. And you're around them, and you don't have to be around them for very long to get the competitive juices flowing. And it's like, nah, I want to shoot for the top. So from that point on, my goal was to broadcast for, a Major League Baseball team, NHL team, NBA team, NFL team. Those are my four major sports. Wasn't much of a soccer person. So that was it. Those became my goals. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm living my dream. I've been doing it for 40 years almost now, basically doing what I wanted to do since the time I was, 8 or 9 years old.
Wow, that's so awesome. Because I was actually going to ask you some questions leading into that, and you led right into it perfectly. So you were about 15 years old. How do you think that you had the maturity level at that point to kind of recognize that and pivot? You know what I mean? You recognize that you love sports. you took a shot in a sense. I mean, you're obviously good enough to get called up to varsity. It's not like the end of the world, right? Like you had some talent, but then you kind of
I think they were looking for a sacrificial lamb, Yari, to be honest with you. But well, yeah, they didn't want to injure any of their real good JV players. But
well, how did you
recognize
that?
I was average at best. I just knew. I mean, I watched a ton of sports as a kid, so I could at a pretty young age, I think, realize greatness, but I could also at a pretty young age realize mediocrity or less than greatness in athletic ability. And I knew I wasn't very good. I wasn't big. I wasn't that fast. I didn't have the tools. So I don't know if it was maturity or just, realization. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did love talking about sports. And, when my mom passed away about 6 years ago, I cleaned her house out and I found all these notebooks of mine in this closet. And I didn't realize that I did this, but I had all these stats that I had written down from the different sports. And, we didn't have computers back then. So it was all, handwritten, just notes about all the teams I followed. And even my high school teams, as we moved up to the high school level, I had journals on them and stuff. It was like, I clearly just loved talking, writing, breathing sports. So while I couldn't do it as an athlete, I had to find a way. And it was my father who gave me the idea, but I guess I kind of had already been doing it because I'd sit in front of a TV with one of those old fashioned tape recorders and I would call the game. I did have this one friend of mine who'd come over too. He didn't go into the business, but we'd sometimes do the game together. So, and for nobody else, but just the tape recorder. And I didn't find any of those tapes when I cleaned out my mother's house. I hope they're not out there anymore because they are bribery material for sure. but that was my first really getting reps. That was my first experience with it. And I, as my father pointed out, you're already doing that. So it must be you like it. So I don't know if it was maturity, Yariv. I think it was more just the sad realization that I wasn't a great athlete. And then the second part of that being, I was kind of already doing what I ended up doing naturally because I just loved it.
It's really funny you say that because actually that's something like I understand about myself and like partially why I do these podcasts. It's like I tell people this as well, like find out what your natural gifts are. Like what are you doing naturally already and nurture them. Because there's a lot to that. Like you would have been doing this regardless of if anybody was listening or not, right? Even if you had a much smaller audience, you probably would be doing this to some degree, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had a much smaller audience early in my career and most people do. But my goal, and I'm doing broadcast coaching now, but I could be doing coaching of any profession, life coaching. And I'd say the same thing. I think a key in life, and I think we might even be getting to the point, especially found out during the pandemic, maybe that there's more pathways to doing this, but find a passion and try to make a living at it. Now, mine was a far-fetched one. I give you that because unless you make it to a major league level or major college, at least in terms of play-by-play or broadcasting, you're going to struggle financially. There's not a lot of money in this business until you get to a big level. And then there's good money, but not until that point. So it's a leap of faith in some sort because I was a smart student. My mother fought me tooth and nail. She wanted me to be a veterinarian. My father was a veterinarian. She wanted me to follow in his footsteps, take over his practice, work with him, and then take over his practice when he retired. And then if not that, a lawyer or a doctor, because I was a good student. What are you doing going to broadcasting when you're a straight A student, So she fought me through my minor league days. She fought me until even when I was down here, I think, even until I got to the television side of things. She was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So, you're going to get people who think you're crazy, but if it's in your heart, that you want to do something, you have that passion. I have a firm belief that if you have a passion for something, you're going to like doing it. So you're going to do it more. So you're going to get better at it. And so eventually you're going to be good, at least good at it, if not great. There are some that are just naturally gifted that are out of this world good. But if you have a passion for something, I find it hard to believe that you won't get at least good at that. But I do think a key to life, at least to a happy life, is to happy professional life, at least, is to find a passion and find a way to monetize it, find a way to make enough money to make a living off of your passion. Not all of us can do it. I know far too many people who are far from that. They're actually miserable in their jobs, and that is a recipe for trouble. So I think because of the pandemic, we all found ways to do things from home or using Zoom as we are here. We're probably now getting into an age where, in fact, we're seeing a lot of people out of the pandemic who are not going back to their regular jobs and finding ways to make money with things they really enjoy from their homes. So maybe now we have more ways of doing that, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah, and I always talk about this: limitations create opportunities to solve problems. That's where a lot of innovation comes from, is from, things being closed off to you. That's where you have to start getting creative. So as let's be honest, right? You have some doubt through your family, which is usually the toughest, right? Because it's the one you take the most to heart. I'm sure you heard some other stuff along the way. And like you said, there's probably some financial hurdles to get over. How did you deal with that internally? Like, how did you kind of persist all the way through until you got to the point of, the Flyers, and all of a sudden, was it just an inner drive that you're like, I don't know anything else, like I just can't help myself? Or is it just back and forth through doing other stuff?
A good question. This may take a while to answer, but
I'm okay with that.
One of my key words that I stress to all my students on JJ Broadcasting Coaching is perseverance. And no matter your field, you're going to have to persevere. But in broadcasting, you'll have to persevere. And now, today, with social media, you're going to have to persevere all the way through, because anybody out there can get their opinion about you to you, whether, if you're on social media. So perseverance is key. And here are my mother, I've already talked about, and people kind of laugh at that. But when you're a kid and your mother is not with you on your dream, it did take some perseverance. Now, once I got to a certain stage, probably late high school, and my father was fully behind me, and once I got to Syracuse, it was more, I was in defiance of her, like, Mom, this is what I'm doing. Like it, take it or leave it. But when I was younger, that could have affected me. So I pushed through that. Then I get to college. I go to Syracuse, highly competitive, and a little bit cutthroat at times. I mean,
sure.
These are kids who don't know how to channel all their energy, and they're so ambitious. And you got to battle for those spots at Syracuse to get the play-by-play. I was fortunate enough to be able to do basketball play-by-play as a sophomore, and football as junior and senior, and do some of the better games. And but it was a scramble for games, but it gets pretty tough. And as a junior, Sports Illustrated came to Syracuse to do a story on the cradle of sportscasters, which Syracuse has churned out sportscasters through the years, even all the way back in the 80s when I was there. It was already considered the cradle of sportscasters. So they went there and they sent a writer to do a story. And they did a story on our whole program, but they kind of centered it around our sports director at the time. And he was getting a lot of the play. He did the game that week. They took pictures of him while he was doing the game. The story comes out a couple of weeks later, and it's great. Talks about all the history, but it is a picture of our sports director, doing the game. And the caption is already a 9 out of a 10. Such as, I'm not going to say his name because where the story goes, but he could say, he is on his way. And he truly was on his way. Once Sports Illustrated says you're 9 out of 10, and you can put that into your resume package. He had a job right out of school, and off he went. It was only a couple weeks after the story came out that I was talking with him, and we were going over games. I was probably being, as most of the guys were, pretty needy, wanted this game, wanted that game, wanted this game. And I think maybe he got tired of me asking for that game or this game or whatever, but he finally just snapped at me. He goes, you're not good enough. I said, I'm not good enough for what? He says, to make it in this business. And I said, what do you mean by that? He says, you can do games here at Syracuse. You might be able to do some minor league games, but you don't have what it takes to do it at, the top level. You don't have it. I said, what don't I have? He goes, wow. And he listed a whole bunch of things he didn't think, I was on the call. He didn't think all this stuff. And this was coming from a guy who had just been called a 9 out of 10 by Sports Illustrated. So I was kind of crushed. I remember going back to my dorm room and thinking, as a junior, is it too late to change majors? What am I going to do here? I mean, if he says it, I mean, we were all basically genuflecting to this guy since the story had come out, and for him to say that, I mean, I must really suck. So it was about 48 hours where I was pretty much thinking, what am I going to do? And then slowly but surely, and with the help of some of my friends and roommates and stuff, it was like, hold it, I'm at Syracuse. I've been doing games since I was a sophomore, which is more than most of the kids in my class could say. I'm doing top level games. I think I sound pretty good. I can't be that bad. Why am I going to let him tell me that I can't make it? And I'm going to get better, right? How does he know how good I might get? So instead of using it to crush me, I used it as motivation pretty much for the rest of my career. And, I got out of Syracuse, and we can get into that, my story to where I got to where I'm at. And I got a lot of breaks and all that, but I made some breaks. But the bottom line is I got here, and I did see that sports director many times. After that, he was kind of tied into Philadelphia in a way. So, he doesn't even remember saying it to me. And I'm very careful when I talk to my broadcast students now, because I don't want something I say to them. And I have to criticize when they show me their clips. I have to go over their clips with them. I want to be very careful that I end that conversation with them knowing about, thinking good about themselves, and not lying about it. I'm going to tell them, you got to do this better, do that better. But I never want to generalize like he did with me, because I don't want to have anyone have the 48 hours I had as a junior in college thinking, wow, I'm not going to make it. And, he didn't even have any idea he said it. So it was a throwaway to him.
Yep.
But to me, it was awful at the time, but as it turned out, motivational. It helped to spur me to get to where I wanted to get. So you do face these kind of adversities on your way. And then the last one I'll tell you is, after I had gotten to Utica, and we're going to go over, because I have to, it's a big part of my story, how I got to be doing AHL hockey. But I had done it for 6 years, and then the word had come that the Utica Devils, the New Jersey Devils, were moving their AHL team. Ironically, they're moving back to Utica this coming year, but they moved out to Albany, and they weren't taking anybody with them. So in effect, I was losing my job.
Sure.
Now, I had done every single game the Utica Devils had ever played, and I had not gotten a sniff from an NHL team. I had sent tapes out whenever there was an expansion team, whenever I'd heard of a job opening. I hadn't even gotten a response. So, and I just gotten married. So to me, this was crossroads time. I had, as a part of doing the hockey, I had become a salesperson in radio, been pretty good at it, hated it. But the sales managers and the general managers of the stations I worked at said I was good at it. I personally did not like it, so I don't know how I was good at it. But at that point, I'm thinking I might be headed in that direction, because, the Florida Panthers and Anaheim Ducks were expansion teams. I'd already sent tapes out to them. And so the last game happens that last year. The Utica Devils lose to the Rochester Americans in the playoffs. And we're on the way home. And Robbie Fatorik was the coach my last year of the Utica Devils. He's a U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer, coached the New Jersey Devils for a while. And he had all the players coming up, going over what they're going to do in the summer, right, with their physical training and so forth. And he looks over at me, and I'll clean this up because Robbie tends to be a little strong with his language. But he says, hey, he pulls me over to his seat. It was kind of weird. I wasn't even working for the team, but we were friends. He says, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm hearing the Devils are leaving. He goes, yeah, it looks like that's going to happen. I said, man, I don't think they're taking anybody with them. And he kind of nodded. And he said, have you got anything in the hopper? And I go, well, I sent tapes to the Ducks and to the Panthers. He said, yeah, how about the other teams? And I said, well, I don't know if the other teams are, if when I find out there's an opening, I send tapes. He goes, no, send them now. Get tapes in their hands. I go, most of those end up in the circular file. Why would I do that? I mean, it's mostly a waste of time. He goes, you never blanking know. So I went home, and back then it wasn't just clipping a link and emailing it. there was no such animal. It was those hard audio tapes, and I had to listen to myself 27 times. How many of our teams there were? Wasn't that many back then, 24, I think. 24 times I had to listen to my audition tape over and over as I dubbed them. Letters, send them out, snail mail. And I sent them all out. And it was about, I went to work for the Utica Bulldogs of the Colonial Hockey League, just kind of as a buffer to see if anything would pan out in that summer. So I was working in their office, was going to do their games, make like $17,000. And remember, I just gotten married about a year and a half earlier, so that wasn't going to cut it long term. But I just took that for them. And I got a call from the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and they said, you're in our final group. And I went through the process, phone interview. I got down to final 5, final 3, and then finally, you're it. You're our guy. And that was in early August. And so, I'm happy as can be. And I'm literally on the phone with them and going over, trying to get in. They had a lot going on, expansion team. And on the phone with Ken Wilson from the Mighty Ducks, when the secretary from the Bulldogs comes in and puts the thing down in front of me and says, Mark Piazza, Philadelphia Flyers, line 2. So my mind didn't compute. I'm thinking, do the Flyers want a secondary affiliation or something with the Bulldog? I couldn't compute what he would be calling me about, but I ended the conversation with Ken, still no contract or anything with them. And Mark is on the other line, and he says, yeah, Mark Piazza from the Flyers, and we're making some changes. Doc Emmerich's left. Gene Hart's going back to television. We have an opening in our radio department, and your tape is one of the ones we really like. So that tape never would have been in the Flyers' hands if it hadn't been for Robbie Fatorik telling me on that bus. Awesome. Because I had not known, and nobody had known, that Mike Emmerich might be leaving the Flyers. Everyone thought Doc was there for a long time, but whether it was money or whatever, he was going to New Jersey and going to take on some more national stuff. And Gene was going back. He had gone to radio, but he was going back to television. So all of a sudden there's a job I didn't know about. And I'm and I just started laughing. And Mark said, interesting reaction, but I think I understand it. And I go, oh, you do? I'm thinking, he has no idea why I'm laughing. He goes, you're already talking with the Mighty Ducks. I said, yeah, I am. So news travels fast. He said, have you signed anything? I said, no. He says, okay, why don't you come down here, this week for an interview and, see what you think. And, as long as you haven't signed anything with them, make a decision. I said, he flew me down the next day, had my interview. He actually told me before the interview, if you don't spit in the guy's face, the job's probably yours. They really like your tape. So I didn't spit in Ron Ryan's face.
Good call.
And they took me to the saloon. Never forget it. Great meal. I'm thinking, wow, I could deal with this. Tour of the spectrum, all that. Flew me back home. By the time I got to the Bulldogs office, the contract was on the fax machine.
Of course.
And so I called Ken Wilson up and said, I think I'm going to go in another direction. He goes, really? And he didn't know. And I explained to him, and I said, is this, in my mind, I was like, is this dirty pool? And I'm thinking, I had not a sniff for 6 years doing NHL hockey. Now I had 2 job offers. And he said, nope, your time's come, my man. And I gave him the amount. I did at least barter a little bit. And he said, I think you ought to go to Philadelphia, don't you? I go, yeah. My mother-in-law at the time was sick, so it was a lot closer. Eric Lindros was in Philadelphia. They were clearly going to win a Stanley Cup before the Ducks. Oh, well, wait, that didn't. I got that one wrong. But I do not regret the decision, because this is a great organization to work for. And I've had so many great moments, memories here to cover. So that's how it happened. I mean, I was this close to being out of the business. If I didn't get those 2 offers, I'm a salesman probably up there in Utica, making good money in a market where you don't have to make good money to live well, but being miserable, doing what we were talking about earlier, not following my passion. I mean, could I have gotten another job a year later? Maybe. But bottom line is, I was this close to not being a broadcaster. So those are just a couple of the bumps in the road that I hit, or the crossroad times. I think we all hit them. I think there are people who hit a lot more than me. I've been blessed. I basically grew up in a town, went to school 45 minutes away, a great school for that particular location, went back to my hometown and worked for 7 years, and went to Philadelphia. A lot of people, it's a crisscross all around the country until you get to where you want to get. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've gone through all this tremendous adversity. I have not, but I did have some moments where doubt certainly was thrown into my mind, whether it be my mother, whether it be the sports director at Syracuse, or whether it be not having a job and looking like my future was done. So I think all have those moments at some point. If you believe it in here and you think you can do it in here, I always tell everybody, don't let somebody else tell you can't do it. You'll know, hopefully that day doesn't ever come, but you'll know when it's time to give it up. Not somebody else telling you that it's time to give it up.
Yeah, no, I love, honestly, that whole story is great because one, that happens to me, people doubting me as well. I use it as fuel. That's why it's something I talk about here all the time. Absolutely have to use it as fuel. It's going to happen to you. It's going to happen, hopefully not repeatedly, but for me, it's happened repeatedly in my life. And every single time I've made an advancement in my career or something, or I turn that energy into something positive. It's extremely important to do. So I love that you started off with that. And then the other thing that you were saying about just throwing the tapes out there, that's one thing I'm learning now. As I'm getting a little bit older, is doing things without a set expectation so much, where, the expectation of, oh, I will fail, or they won't, kind of what you were saying, oh, it's just going to go through the rotation. You really don't know what's going to happen. And these are the things that kind of stop you from making the move. And you just kind of went, you know what, I'm going to focus on the process of finding a job, right? So I'm going to do what I need to do it, right? And by just throwing that leap of faith out there and throwing it out there into the universe, you were rewarded. And I think that's a big part of it, is that we kind of set these mental blockers for ourselves in a lot of ways. And I think you found a way to push past it. And I think you obviously listened to the right messages at the right time. Like, you could have listened to the other guy and be like, oh, maybe I need to change my career. And I think that's actually, yeah, I understand what you're saying. You didn't have the most perseverance to go over everybody, but that's a pretty big thing. I mean, it's hard to listen to somebody you respect tell you you're not good enough. It's one thing if it's somebody you don't respect, like, you can brush that off.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, today with social media, right? We're all, me, myself included, you get blasted on Twitter or wherever. But who are these people? Many of them are hiding behind their screen name. And, so you can't, I tell all these, and I was really concerned about this about 8 or 9 years ago because of my kids. I said to my wife, they're going to see criticisms of me online. I hope we can, tell at that time, 12, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds that, this is just, everybody's going to have some haters out there. They now understand it. Obviously, they understand social media way better than I do. But, when they're growing up, you worry about that. And when you're growing up, if you now are growing up in today's, it's got to be challenging. I can see why we have so many people who lose their way, because there's so much negativity out there in social media. There's so much good about social media, the fundraising that's done there, the information that we can gain. Some of it is incorrect, but if you can differentiate and find the right stuff, there's lots of good. So I don't want to say social media is evil. It isn't, but there's also the bad side of it, which I'm not sure there's a way to contain. But for anybody going up through broadcasting, you're in the public eye. You're seen or heard. At the very least, you're heard, or if it's in written form, your stuff is read. It's going to get criticized. There's just it is. I mean, there's too many opinions out there, and now with social media, everybody can get their opinion out there. So you have to have thick skin in this business. But I would say even before social media, and I think a case in point, you have to have thick skin to make it in this business. You also have to have good people to help you. I mean, Robbie Fatorik is flat out the reason I'm here. I mean, without his guidance, I would not have sent that tape to Philadelphia. They would not have called me. I would not have been in the running. Tommy McVie was the first Utica Devils coach. My father had passed away. He kind of became my second dad and taught me the ropes of being a broadcaster. There's so many people I've watched, Bob Murphy, Pat Summerall, Dan Kelly, Marv Albert, people of that ilk that I watched that don't know me. I did meet Bob Murphy and Marv Albert, but they don't know me. But bottom line is they had an impact on my career. So you also have to have that a good support staff, both in contact with and people to maybe to be your idol. And the broadcast coaching I'm doing right now, I try for some of them that are Flyers fans. I guess I'm both because they've already watched me. Some are kids from parts of the country. They don't know who the heck I am. And I don't care as long as they know that I'm here to help them and to give them constructive criticism, but also give them a kick in the butt or pat on the back when they need it, because we all need that from time to time. And the adversity goes right on through, Yariv. I mean, I lost my Phillies job less than a year ago, and that was completely out of the blue. Had no idea. In fact, weeks before it happened, was told, "You're always there for us. Thanks for being there this year through the pandemic." And then, 3 weeks later, I'm told I'm a luxury that they can no longer afford. So, it was a shock. But through that, I've now been able to do the broadcast coaching, which I'm finding tremendously rewarding. Just the interaction, seeing these people who are at stages where I was in my career, also seeing people. I have one guy who was in auto. He was a car salesman and decided late to cross over, and he's doing U.S. junior hockey at age 33. And when I heard his tape, I said to myself, just too good for where he's at. So an opening came up in the AHL after he took my course, and I went through it. He's a great, great guy too. I mean, really has his head in the right place. And so I pushed him one way, and he finished second. He almost got an AHL job. He's now currently in the running for another AHL job. If he gets that AHL job, I can't tell you how happy I'm going to be. So it's a whole different world I've opened up for myself. I'm also narrating audiobooks, which I never thought I'd do. And I'm learning about things like Bitcoin and how to crush a interview in product management, things I never thought I'd investigate. I'm not necessarily investigating, but when you read, you learn. So I'm enjoying that too. And I'm also getting able to spend more time with my family. And so while losing that job was a shock and a negative, trying to turn it into as much of a positive as I can. I miss the ballpark. I certainly miss the guys, Scott Fransky, Larry Anderson, Kevin Franzen, and the people I worked with indirectly. But I don't necessarily miss the job as much as I thought I would. I'm finding other ways. I miss the paycheck. I'm not going to lie there, but the actual being able to do some of these other things has, as you say, it's funny, you adapt in life. And I know the saying is one door shuts and another opens. I think that's a little simplistic, but you might have to find some other doors to open. But it's helped. I mean, this happened to me before too, in 04-05 when hockey had its Armageddon lockout, missed the whole season. We were not paid. So I, at the time, had 2 young children. I needed checks. So I went out and I found work. I did overnight shifts at WIP. I did some, we called it Sack Rise, but it was the morning sports television newscast for Comcast Sportsnet in Sacramento. I did them from here. And I did AA baseball, the Trenton Thunder. And I had to go out and search and find all those things. And I was working games, going right from games to the IP to do overnight shifts, trying to stay awake on the drive there, and then doing an overnight shift, and then sleeping from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It was crazy. I was making half maybe of what I had been making doing the Flyers. But, that Trenton Thunder job helped get me the Phillies job. Doing talk has definitely helped me get some other things. So, things, the other saying is things happen for a reason. I'm not sure of that. I think there's a reason behind everything in life for sure. Mm-hmm. But that time, and then again with the Phillies, I've been able to find other things that I found very rewarding. So you're going to face bumps in the road. It's how you handle those bumps that determines your relative success.
Absolutely. I have a quote from Winston Churchill. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Oh, it's courage. I'm sorry, not success. Courage is going from, and I totally see that, right? And you kind of have that here in stride, and I think that's what I really want people to take away from in this. And I guarantee most people who are going to listen to this had no idea that you went through what you went through, right? They probably thought, oh, we got the job, and then got the job, and then but it's almost never like that. And if you like kind of what you were saying, right? That previous lockout, it probably prepared you for what you're going through today. Right. It's
absolutely
growth mindset behind it. And now that you're obviously trying to adapt that to the people that you are also coaching and mentoring, and I like what you said there at the end, right? Like you give them the criticism, but then you show them that there's still talent here, right? There's still a seed for more. Just because you take some kind of punishment or hear some kind of criticism, it's not supposed to stop you. It's supposed to help you adapt and pivot and reapply yourself, right? And maybe you got to work a little harder sometimes, but sometimes you need to hear these things, or these things have to happen to you in life to kind of set you on a trajectory. Like I agree with you. I don't think everything happens for a reason, but I think life opens up a series of options, right? And depending on your character, you kind of have a choice, right? What can I do with this now? So like you said, yeah, you lost that Phillies, which I'm sure hurt at the time. I can imagine. Like I have a dream of being the GM of the Flyers, right? So my mind, I know in my head, I'm like, if I get that job, I'm probably getting fired from it.
Yeah.
Like there's a very good chance I'll lose my job. And like you have to be ready for that type of stuff. And then what do you do with that? And then go from the Phillies to be like, you know what? I'm going to give back. You're finding a reward that you probably didn't even know existed. And this could grow way beyond what you even imagine, especially because you clearly have said that you're passionate about it. Do you see any potential in that and kind of growing this beyond what you've done so far?
Well, I mean, right now, still doing the Flyers. Once the season, the way this worked is when the Phillies announced that or told me, that was late. That was mid-October.
Yeah. Wow.
By late October, my agent and I talked about doing something. And by November, we'd kicked it off. And November, December, I was so busy. I mean, just one-on-one sessions left and right. And it was so fun. I mean, I'm meeting all these different people. And you know, again, it's not, most people see a camp or a seminar or a Zoom for me, and they think play-by-play. But mine are about all broadcasting. If you want to be a sideline reporter, you want to be a talk show host, you want to be a podcast, you want to be an anchor, I've done pretty much all that. I haven't podcasted per se, but I've done all the other. I've guested on a zillion podcasts. If that counts. But I mean, it's to be honest with you, I've done pretty much all of it. I've done sideline. I've done sports talk shows. I've anchored. So I try to get that out to people. It's not just a play-by-play camp. I talk about play-by-play, but I also talk about interviewing. I talk about camera presence. I talk about mic presence, just in terms of radio. I talk about all that, and it's also interactive. So whatever questions you have, I'm going to try to answer. So I'm rolling along with this in November and December, and then realized the hockey season is going to start up. It looked like in January, and it finally was. So I kind of said, whoa, we got to slow this down, because there's no way I can be doing 3 or 4 coaching sessions a day around a hockey schedule. So we cut it back. I snuck some in during the hockey season. But then the season ended, and we said the biggest drawback that we found to it and it hurt me that this was the case, was kids couldn't afford it. Right. So I had to find a way to make it affordable, but also not to the point where I was working so many hours and not cost effective for me. So what we did is they came up with the idea of these camps, and we're going to have 3 this summer, one here in late June, and then another in July, another in August, 2 sessions a day, one for kids up to 17, another for kids college age and above. And again, all walks of communication, and they're going to be group sessions, but they're going to hear my story. They're going to hear my basic fundamentals. They're going to hear a lot of broadcast techniques, and then they're going to hear whatever they want, because I always open it up for questions. And if they want to go ahead with the one-on-one mentoring, they'll get a half price on that. And when I say mentor, I have, I believe, 33 people that I've mentored so far with this program. Each and every one of them has reached out to me at least once since. And I leave my email and phone open to them as a mentor for life, as long as you want me. I mean, I'm not going to mentor you unless you don't want me to. But so that's the option you'll have off of these camps. And it is that one-on-one that I find so rewarding. When I hear about a guy getting a shot at an AHL job, when I hear a guy who is a podcaster who says since he took the lessons, his podcast is getting more and more views, and he loves the advice he got. When I see a sideline reporter who's now getting more and more experience at school and starting to feel more and more confident in front of the camera, I mean, that is really it's been tremendously rewarding. More rewarding than me nailing a call in a game. So yeah, I found something I didn't know. I mean, I had all along taken phone calls and done some emails here and there with kids, even when I was doing both baseball and hockey, but there was never time to do more than just a phone call or a quick email. Yeah. Now this is, it's 3-hour-long sessions. In the case of the camps, it's 1 3-hour session. And then whenever from there, you need help with a phone call or email or whatever. So, yeah, it's been fun. And it is a case of, you don't know what's out there. There's other things that I want. One thing on my bucket list has always been to act. I've always wanted to, even if it's a small, really tiny bit part, be in a movie. So I got to find that one, Yariv. I'm not sure where that one's going to come in, but I got to find that one. And there's other things I want to do, but the coaching, I don't know how much more until I retire from the hockey side, which I'm hoping won't be for a little while. I'll have summer times to do things like we're doing this year, but to do it full time, if could I make enough to, possibly I could. It's also a finite audience to it. There's only so many people that want to get into sports broadcasting, whether it be, play-by-play or all the different fields we talked about. There's still a finite group to that. So, I don't know how many more people out there, and I'm not a national name. So while I do the kid I was telling you about was somewhat local, but I've had 2 Ohio State students who don't know me from Adam really, who did it. You're going to get some of those, but you're not going to get as many as like Jim Nantz would get if he were doing this. So there's limitations to it. But in my small, corner of the broadcast world, I've had a great response, and it's been a lot of fun. So I envision continuing to do it as long as there is a desire for people to do it. I'll continue doing it. I have when I know I have a session coming up, I don't wake up with dread. I wake up with anticipation. So it's I tell people, going back to what you originally talked about, having a passion for what you do. When I have a game throughout my entire career, which now spans 40 years, when my feet hit the ground and I have a game that night, it's a good day. And I've gotten to that point with these classes. So that's a good thing.
That's awesome. I get that with this podcast, to be honest with you. I get energy.
Yeah, it's good.
That's why I don't stop doing it. It's like, if, I don't even make any money off of this stuff. I make very little off of it. So it's like, I just do it because it feels right when you're done, like emotionally. Yeah. And I love what you're saying.
You're not alone with that. I mean, several of the people that have taken my classes are podcasters. And one of the oldest student I've had is a 50-year-old guy who's heavily into it. And you probably even know him, to be honest with you, because he's heavily into the Flyers and the podcasting from that end. But to see his passion for it is really refreshing to me. Yeah. I mean, it's easy for me to say I have passion. I'm making a good living at it, right? But he's making, I don't know, he's been able to monetize a little bit lately, but not making a lot of money off it. He has another job, obviously.
Same, yeah.
And to see his passion for it, I just love that. It drives me. So, and the same with you. So, and there's a lot of it. There's a lot of that going around. And I think now with this pandemic, maybe it's just more because of Zoom and because of the various ways we can get ourselves out there now, YouTube, that people are finding ways to do this now, and not just sports, cooking, art. I have a friend of a friend who is now on Twitch with paintings, showing off her artwork.
Yep.
You know, she's monetizing it to some degree with, you know, tributes or followers or however Twitch works. I'm not really that. And, you know, my friend said, hey, check her out. And I did. And I watched it. I know nothing about art, but I watched for a good hour because I was watching somebody in her element. And she clearly has a tremendous passion for art. And here's this vehicle now where she can be at her house and do it and get a little money off of it. So I think now with what we have here, more people are going to be able to do what they really truly want to do. Now, the ability to make enough money to make a living is a question, but at least they can do it. In your case, you're not making any money and you still have that passion. And in this other guy's case, he's starting to make a little money, but it's more about the fact that he's doing it. Right? So,
well, we make a little bit. We make a little bit off the brand. We make a little bit off the brand, but I don't even consider it that, because for me, it's like, it's the same thing as you with the tapes. I'm throwing it out into the universe and I wait to see what happens. Like, I have other podcasts. I have one that I have with my sister, which, you know, we did with a famous musician, Aaron Draper. And then I have another one today, which I don't want to say the name of yet, but again, I'm just interacting with people I normally would never get to interact with. And it's all out there recorded in the universe. And I just think of it that way, as, you know, let's see what happens. I'm not putting too much of an expectation on, I want my numbers to be this, or I want to be rich off of it.
Right.
I really just, I know I want to connect with these people. I know I want to have these conversations. Let's see what happens. I love what you're saying here altogether. And one thing I'm really taking away is it's almost like what you're talking about, though, is, and I think you mentioned this a little bit too, is that it's not just broadcasting, right? It's like almost like life coaching in a way to some degree as well, right? It might just be targeted towards what you know, but you're really talking about something that's transferable to other things. Do you see that with your skills as well, as like as you're kind of going towards your career? Because I think you're you're like 57, I think, at this point, right?
Out of here.
At 58, apologies. Well, you're 58, right? So you have to be considering that.
I would have really been happier if you'd guessed like 47. But
sorry. Well, you look 47. If it makes you.
Oh, yeah. Too late.
Yeah, to me, you look exactly the same from when I started watching. So, but you know, you have to be considering this in your life. Like, what am I going to do with my skills? Like, you have gifts that were given to you. You know, you seem to be using them in other ways. Is that something you've considered outside of what you're doing now? Like, are you thinking like maybe after broadcasting, I don't know if you've thought this, but maybe you have something else in mind as well?
Yeah. I mean, voiceovers, I love,
there's your acting.
You've probably watched the teases that we used to do for the broadcasts. We're not doing them as much anymore because of the crossover, they call it, with the pregame show. But up until last year, there would be this 30-second to 45-second in playoffs, maybe as much as a minute video montage, video kind of thing with my voice on it, you know, leading you into the game. I love those. And I've told the people at 3601 South Broad, Arena Vision, if you ever need a voice over those for the game presentation, I love doing that stuff. So I'm thinking, hey, you know, I got to get into that. My daughter wants to get into film editing. She's actually working at NFL Films, and awesome. So maybe someday she can do the editing of it, and I can just do the voiceover. But I do love voiceovers. So anybody out there, you need my voice? I have to get permission from NBC to. Obviously, I can't be voicing over for direct competitors and things like that. But I do love doing voiceovers, and that comes back to the narrating of audiobooks, which
is awesome.
I'm enjoying it. I'm doing nonfiction for now. I do want to get into a movie, but I'm not quite sure I'm a great actor. And when you're doing fiction, you really have to get into the role, and many times have accents I can't do. So when I stick to straight authoritative, you know, self-help books or financial books or things of that ilk, I think that's probably more my hot zone, as they say, in my swing path. But anyhow, I mean, yeah, I'm finding things. I mean, I fully realize that I'm getting closer to the end than I am the beginning of my play-by-play career. Hockey, in particular, I think is a hard sport to do. I think baseball you can do well into your 80s. I mean, Vin did it into his 90s, and Scully. You can do it, but hockey's too fast. We're too far away. Your sight, your ability to speak quickly. I think once you get to a certain age, it's very difficult to do. And you might be able to do it, but you're still going to have a lot of people out there saying, "Oh my God, it's so much beyond it." So I don't want that to happen. And so I envision myself maybe 10 more years, maybe a little less.
I hope longer.
If they'll have me, as I found out with the Phillies. I mean, might not be my decision, but I mean, I do, in my mind, would like to go maybe to my mid 60s and then see where we're at. I mean, if we're at 65, if I'm 65 and the Flyers still haven't won a cup and they look like they might win a cup, and if I'm 68 and they still haven't won the cup and I think they might win the cup in the next year or two, maybe because I really do want to. And hey, if I'm retired and they win the cup, I'll still be very happy, but there's something to be said about actually calling games for a cup champ. Yeah. And I've wanted, that's part of my whole dream, which hasn't come true. I mean, I've called a baseball champion. I have not called a hockey champion. And, I wasn't the lead voice for the Phillies, but I was there all season long doing games. So when they won it, and that was one of my ultimate thrills. The parade was something I'll never forget. And I just want to be a part of one more of those and want it to be orange and black. So I have goals within my career still shooting for, but I do not want to be one of those guys who's doing games and is not very good at it anymore. It's just, a hindrance to the broadcast as much as a help. So when that time comes, in my mind's eye, I think all along, I always kind of thought I would be just retiring and into my, pool or taking trips and all that. But I'm kind of thinking now, no, I think there are other ways actually I can bring some income in, which can help retirement and also continue with my passions. So, and we've talked about some of them. So yeah. I think we're all getting into that realm now, again, helped by the technology.
Yeah, getting creative. And to make it clear, I hope you do it for a very long time. I wouldn't want to see them change it at all. I just kind of brought it up as like a thought process.
No, I'm quite realistic about the fact that, and it kind of hit home this year with the changing of the national TV package.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 58 and it's like I had a lot of people say, "Hey, you got to get your name in at ESPN and TNT." And I'm like, I don't think they're looking for 58-year-olds unless they're already established.
You got a great voice, though. I mean, and actually something I noticed you didn't mention, and maybe because, obviously the generational gap, but video games have actually gotten to a point where a lot of them are film quality, like really, like the writing. And that might be an avenue to explore as well, because you have a great voice.
I've Bill Clement, of course, was the voice. Of course. NHL. He probably, when you were, was he on NHL 2000?
No, not 2000. He came later, but I do remember he was.
Who was on in 2000?
It's the guy from Alberta, Canada, I believe. What's his name? He does I think he does Calgary Flames.
Jim Houston, you're talking.
Yeah.
He's actually Vancouver, but now Jim refused to travel this year due to the COVID problem. So he did not and is not doing. He's the number one play-by-play voice now in Canada. He would be doing one of the semifinals and doing the finals. Now, I don't know if that's changing as we get Canada's finally loosening things up. Montreal's obviously come over the border, so maybe that's changed. But through the first two rounds, he wasn't even doing the games. And he's the best of the best in Canada. But then it became Bill and Gary. It was Bill and Gary for a while, and then Doc.
That was great. I missed them. Now they have.
That's another thing. I could probably look into that. You're right. I have not so far.
There's a lot of stuff there with quality, and it wasn't for a while, but now it's getting to the point where they actually have like serious writers, and it's something like like they have Pixar level quality. Like
Well, my son plays a lot of the video games, and he had a baseball one up the other day. And when I walked into his room to tell him something, I thought it was an actual game. I didn't look real closely at the screen, and then I looked closer. I go, wow, that's actually a video game. That's not a game.
Yeah.
I do have fears about that though, because like kids now are going to be watching those more than the actual games, and that's leading to some of the ratings things you're seeing. Although I think a much bigger part of that is more of us are watching the game right here
on the phone,
on our iPads and so forth. So
illegal streams.
Yeah, that's another avenue. There's all kinds of avenues out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I've often fancied myself a guy who could get into the stock market too. Not big money, but just see what I could do with a little bit of money. And
absolutely.
So there's all kinds of different things out there for people, and more and more now accessible to us. So find your passion. Go find a way to make money. The one quick story, I know we're way over your limit here. But good. The one other thing that I wanted to tell people about was in Utica. I didn't just find the Utica Devils job. You get breaks in life, but you also make breaks.
Yes.
And I had to make my breaks. When I got done with Syracuse, it's really awesome when you get done with college, right? You celebrate graduation, you're happy, you don't have to do classes anymore. And then what? The real world is here, right?
Yeah.
And so that happened for me. I went home and I had nothing. I had done some cable TV sports at Syracuse, but nothing for a job, and so I went to the WIBX, the local station that I told you about earlier that would have been my ultimate goal at one point. News talk sports station. They had a sports talk show at night, news all day, one news talk show. And I said, hey, can I, for a month, just kind of hang around Tim Roy, the sports director?
Sure.
And Randy Gorman at the time was the news director, and just, if you need me to help, run errands, whatever, be a runner, whatever. But, just I want to hang around. And I think because I was from Syracuse and I was a local kid, they said yes. So they let me do it. And before long, they had me riding the board, which people hate to do during recorded programs and things like that. And before long, I noticed on the weekends, they weren't doing anything but music. And in fact, I ended up being my very first job on the air in commercial radio was a Polish show. The lady's name was Maria Kowalski, and she spoke in Polish. I understood none of it. She would point, and I would start the polka or the commercial. I'd do some in English when she needed English read some commercials, read the IDs. That was my first voice on commercial radio. And I owe Maria Kowalski this job because it was doing that show that got me in there on the weekends. And then I noticed on the weekends, they ran top 40 music. The Polish show was in the morning. And then as the day moved along, they ran top 40 music around their sporting events. All week long, they're news, talk, sports. They did have a jazz show that ran overnight, but outside of that, it was news, talk, sports. And then all of a sudden, the weekends, you've got Syracuse sports, you've got New York Yankees, New York Mets at times, New York Giants, CBS sports, local sports that they carried. In and around all those games is top 40 music. And before long, I was writing the board. That was me DJing. Some more, by the way, bribery material out there if there are tapes of that. But so here I am. I've been there like 3 weeks. My month's pretty much coming to an end. I had a hint, kind of a hint they were going to at least hire me as a part-time person just to ride the board and things. But that was it. So I put this written proposal together for a weekend sports talk show in and around their sporting events. Why have music when you don't have music any other time except for overnight hours? And they went for it. I wrote it to the sports director, the news director, and the program director. We sat down in a meeting. And I remember going into that meeting saying, what am I doing? I'm a 22-year-old kid just out of college, and here I am at this radio station. And they had to be thinking the same thing. But they went for it. And who else to host but me? And so I had myself a full-time job, noon to midnight, Saturday, Sunday. Social life, gone.
Yeah.
But I had myself a full-time job. They gave me, that was 24 hours. They gave me 16 hours of reporting or doing some stuff during the week just to make me a full-time employee. And I had myself a job. And 6 months after that, Tim Roy got a job in Birmingham, Alabama. He's now been the voice of the Golden State Warriors, Tim, for many years. But he went to Birmingham, and guess who becomes the sports director? I'm just turned 23, and I'm now the sports director doing Utica College basketball, Utica Blue Sox baseball, Mohawk Valley Comets hockey, high school sports, a talk show every night. I got somebody else to do the weekend show. And about 9 months after that, the New Jersey Devils decided to move their farm team from Portland, Maine to Utica, New York. And guess what station gets their rights? WIBX with Jim Jackson as the sports director, who's now going to be the play-by-play voice of the Utica Devils. So I'm 24, maybe just turned, maybe not quite. And I'm now doing AHL hockey in addition to a talk show, in addition to some of those other sports.
Yeah.
So was I lucky? Damn right. I was lucky Tim Roy was good and got a job in a higher market. I was lucky that the New Jersey Devils decided to move to Utica. But if I didn't, A, have the guts to go in there and ask to just pal around for a month, and B, have more guts to put together this proposal for a weekend sports talk show, I wouldn't have been there for any of that. So I got breaks, but I kind of put myself in position to get those breaks. And then I went 6 years without a sniff. And we picked that story up later. Yeah. But the bottom line is I'm not here without Maria Kowalski. That's the bottom line. And I mean, you have to start small. You don't start necessarily doing what you want to do in your profession, your particular profession.
Right.
But, if there's a hint of it, for me, it was, the hint of it was.
No, you unplugged your mic.
Muted myself when I picked up my mic. But my whole thing was I had a microphone. I don't know how to use it yet, but I had a microphone and that was it for a Polish show. But that's what kind of got me, as you can see, the progression of it to where I am. So I try to pass that lesson along to all my students as well. You just get experience. You just never know what it's going to lead to, but look for those opportunities. Don't be afraid to reach a little bit out of your box. Don't be a pain in the butt about it, but, go for it. And you never know where you might land.
Yeah, you got to have courage. I've been saying this quite a bit, like have courage, the universe will take care of the rest. Like if you don't take those chances, that you're just not going to know. You're not going to know what happens in the end. You're not going to create those opportunities. And I think that is an awesome story, quite frankly, because it's the theme of this whole thing, where I think it's very clear that that's a big part of this is, kind of making your own opportunities. Like I like what you said earlier, right? Like you can't listen to everybody about how to get things. You have to get creative. And there's obviously a more generic line that I like a lot with luck. And you see this with sports a lot. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation, right? Like, the teams are lucky, right? The person is lucky, but they were prepared for that opportunity when it came around. So it's luck plus your character, right? The choices you made, you decided to make. Let's end on this, and this is going to be a little off topic, but something I was doing a little research on you before we started doing this. So I started listening to some other stuff. I noticed that you said you didn't travel much in your life up until the Flyers played overseas, and that you kind of regretted that. Has that changed now? Has that goal changed? Because I personally find travel, not just domestically in the U.S., I would argue does it as well, but it has this ability to just increase some awe into your mind, to just kind of expand your brain, allows you to appreciate home, but also understand the world better. Do you find that you're going to be traveling more now?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. I spent my entire life with no desire to travel outside of North America. Now, when you say I hadn't traveled much, I had traveled a lot.
Right.
But all within North America. Canada, U.S., couple stops quickly in Mexico for my honeymoon. And
sure.
But for the most part, I was I don't know what the word is, landlocked here. I was here. But I didn't have any desire to. My wife's full-blooded Italian. She, her bucket list is to go to Italy. And
of course.
I foresaw that when we retire, that'll be the first trip we take. But I really had no desire to. And then came our trip to Switzerland and Prague, the Czech Republic for the opening of the season. I guess that's 2 years ago now. The seasons are all convoluted because of the pandemic, but the 2019-2020 season. And I just, Switzerland in particular, which was our first stop. I mean, there's lakes and there's mountains and there's all these unbelievably nice people. And I just, for 4 days, we were there, 3.5. I was like, wow, there is a whole world out there. And then we went to Prague, and it rained a lot of the time we were there. But what a beautiful city in terms of the architecture, and just to see a different part of the world. And so I came back from that trip saying, yeah, I think I'm going to go see more of the world. And then, of course, 3 months later, the world shut down. So, I haven't been out of Philadelphia but once now in 400 and some days. And it's a tough adjustment for me because I probably never would have been very good at a 9-to-5 job, doing the same thing, same office, same town. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I do. I love to travel and be in different places to do my job. And I've always been, through the baseball and hockey, all over the map, within North America, but all over the map. So to spend now, we're in June. So this is now 12 months now. Mm-hmm. My one trip, unfortunately, was a drive back home upstate New York for a funeral. That's it. I have slept in the bed in this place for whatever that would be, 420 or 430 out of the last 431 days or whatever it is. So probably more than that. So this is tough. I need to get back out there. And, we're doing some of these games off monitors, doing all the games off monitors for road games. There's some rumblings out there that they're going to continue with that even if the pandemic's over, because they save money or whatever, safety, whatever the reasons are behind it. That will not be good for me. I mean, we're just talking about when I retire, that might bring about retirement a lot earlier, because it's just, I need to be on the move. I need to be in the atmosphere of the arena. I need to be talking with the players and coaches in informal settings, where you actually get some of your best information. You have to decipher what you can and can't use, but you still get really good stuff that way. I need to see the back referee. I need to see where the puck's going, not where it is. So I pray that they do not go to road games off monitors on a permanent basis. But if they do, I'll do the games to the best of my ability. But it will take some of the passion out of it for me, for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing that replaces presence. Like, there's nothing that replaces being in the same room. I think, to be honest with you, I work remote. I work in tech on the side. I think a lot of these companies are making assumptions that are not true because of money. And I think they will realize that some of these assumptions are incorrect, and where they have to spend money, they will probably still have to spend money. And that,
I can tell you, as soon as a game comes on, it doesn't matter the sport, I can tell if the announcer is there or not.
Interesting. I'm going to listen to that.
And there's nothing more. Well, I guess if there is a positive about doing a game remotely, you are always seeing what's on camera, because as a broadcast coach, I do have to tell students, don't if you're on TV, you have to know what's on the screen. That's what you have to be referring to. If you're doing radio, you have total freedom, talk about whatever you want. But if you're doing television, whatever's on that monitor, once the whistle blows, or even during play, John Forsland's great at this. When they cut to a shot down low, it says right in front of you, that kind of stuff. So he's obviously very monitor conscious. I'm not quite that monitor conscious. Once play stops, I'm extremely monitor conscious. I'm watching the game directly out of the corner of my eye. I might see that we cut to a low level camera, but bottom line is, that's a small advantage to make up for all the other advantages you get from being there. So you can't see the far side for hockey. The easy telltale sign of a guy who's doing a game off a monitor is any shot or pass from the far side, you won't hear the name of who the guy is. you might, I shouldn't say any, but 90% of them. Because if a guy is just showing you his jersey and then cuts out that way and makes a play, okay, you know. But if he's barreling down the left wing into the play, you're not going to see his number. You can't read the sleeve off the monitor. And there also are the trailers that come into the play. We had one in an Islander. Was it Islanders? Can't remember who it was now. No, it was not. It was Washington, Connor Sherry. He was the trailer on an overtime game-winning goal. So a great save was made, although the goalie was reaching behind him. And so you're trying to make sure, is the puck in? You're not quite sure yet. And a guy came from late and scored, and you had no idea who it was. And they cut to him, and I got a quick look at his face, and it just I didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
So I never announced the goal scorer. Now, some people say, I covered it. The game is over. Capitals win, blah, 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 blah. But the bottom line is, to me, I didn't get the name of the goal scorer. So,
yeah.
So anyhow, it is what it is. For safety reasons, I'm completely for it. The work that was done this year on those games to do the games remotely was unbelievable. They did whatever they could for us to make us as good as we could possibly be. Completely appreciate that. And if we do it again that way, I'll appreciate that work again. But if we're all vaccinated and if there's full crowds, full crowds and other networks are sending people, it's going to be hard for me to say that it's for safety. At that point, it's for economics, right? Yep. I mean, what other reason would there be? So it would be hard for me to be using safety as a reason for us doing that if we're where we're at right now, come October. Now there's variants out there. Things could go in the wrong direction, whatever. Sure. We could hope, God, let's hope not, but be back in a worse situation with a pandemic. Then in that case, I completely understand, safety first. But outside of that, I sure hope we're traveling.
Yeah, me too. And I hope it doesn't cause you to retire early, because I don't want to see you go anywhere, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't.
I love listening to you.
It's just some of the passion would be gone, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough doing games. You get eye strain there. It's so weird doing games off monitors. So
imagine.
And even worse when the team was struggling, because it's like so quiet. You're in a studio and they're falling behind 4-0. It's like, wow. Jonesy and I would look at each other like, you'd have to manufacture energy. You would.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say, in what I do for a living, I rarely have to manufacture energy. It's usually what you see is my energy.
Yeah.
I like to say it about Steve Coates. I mean, my first partner here in radio, and everybody knows him. That energy you see, that's not manufactured. That's Steve Coates. He has that energy. And, but I think we all this year, with the way the strange year was, at times we had to manufacture energy a little bit just to have that excitement, try to get that excitement to the viewers. So you'd like to have that be more natural. And certainly when you're at an arena, it is more natural. But, yeah. Powers that be, people way higher than me on the pay scale are going to make those decisions. And let's hope we're all out and about next year. But if not, I'll do the best I can with whatever we decide. Yeah,
just another one of those life pivots, I'm sure people.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it to a close here. Jim, this was awesome. The stories worked out perfectly for what I was hoping for. I think, do you have any shout out? You want to give a shout out again to your school?
Oh yeah. I mean, anybody who's interested. And again, it's broadcasting of any type of sports broadcasting. I did have one person ask me news broadcasting, and I've done some news anchoring, limited, but and things, so we can even talk that, because they're basically the same concepts, but it's not just play-by-play is what I'm trying to say.
Cool.
If you have any questions, send an email to jjbroadcastingcoaching@gmail.com, or if you check my Twitter at Jim J Philly, and that's spelled PHILLY at Jim J Philly. I have a pinned tweet which has a link to the site where you can go and find out about signing up and find out all the information. Basically, we have 3 camps this year, one coming up I don't know when this is running or when you're going to get this up, but it's
a
week from Saturday. It's June 26th, then one in early July, and then one in August. And again, they're separated into camps for whatever age to 17, and then from 18 on up. And they're going to be group Zooms, which could lead to things down the road at a much less expensive price than what we had before. So for that, would love to hear from you. Any questions, just let me know.
Awesome. Perfect. And I do write an article that goes out to Bleacher Report as well. So I'll make sure to put a link to your content. Maybe I'll take it from I'll ask you actually personally. So what you want to add in there. So there'll be some extra content to contact you there on the article itself. Great. And I'll put it in the details of the video as well.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you coming on. Honestly, we went way over, but I have no problem with that. I prefer this stuff. I just don't like taking people's time like usually, but if the conversation's going well, I definitely don't have any problems with it. So it's good stuff.
It's always fun. As long as I didn't bore you with it. I actually later on today, I'm doing a radio interview with the station back in Utica. So today is a reminisce day for me because I did a lot of that here today.
Well, perfect opportunity. Good. I'm glad that I fit the theme. So thank you again, Jim. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for everybody for listening. Like, subscribe, share it out. Anything you can do to help for sure. Comment. If you have anything for Jim, I can try to relay the message, but try to leave your comments and try to answer them as best I can. Remember to follow Flyers Nitty Gritty and all of our writers. And remember to always level up.